candidate for the 48th Ward tonight. So I am a nonprofit leader here in the neighborhood. I run Helix Education. We're super happy to be at home here in Edgewater over on Clark and Dunne. And I'm also the board chair for the Edgewater Chamber of Commerce. And so I'm just going to walk through a little bit of welcome, give a couple of things, talk about the rules of the night, and then I'm going to get things going, okay? So I want to first welcome both candidates, Joe Dunne. And Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth. Congratulations both of you for making the runoff. I also want to thank the church, St. Edith's, for having us tonight, and all of our co-hosts that helped get this organized. The Edgewater Chamber of Commerce, the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce, and Uptown United. I also want to thank all of the neighborhood block clubs and organizations that helped put this together tonight. ETNA, EGA, EPIC, BARGE, ETNA, EARC, and LBRC. We really, really appreciate all the help and support that went into getting this event together. So, for tonight's event, the format is going to cover a range of topic areas through questions that have been submitted by the audience in advance with our community partners. Our amazing moderator will keep things moving throughout the night. And the rules are that each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the opening question. Then, they will each have 2 minutes to answer every following question after that. Rebuttals will be managed by our moderator and will be limited to 1 minute at their discretion. Okay? Now I'd like to turn it over to our amazing moderator, Pat Whalen, who is the host of Good Evening with Pat Whalen. Pat is a long veteran of the 48th Ward. He hosts an amazing show where he interviews thought leaders, political leaders, everybody interested in Chicago and the region ends up on Pat Whalen's show at some point. You can check it out on Instagram, Google Good Evening with Pat Whalen, and from there, I'll let you have it. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good evening, Edgewater. Very good. Always nice to be back in the 48th Ward. Full disclosure, I am from Uptown. No, that's not nice. That's not nice. But this is good. We're getting all of our vocalizations out right now, right? Because while the candidates are answering questions, we want to keep it down. As Sean explained, we got 3-minute opening statements. 2-minute answers, and then 1-minute rebuttals as needed, okay? To begin, to decide who answers which question first, and who gives the first opening statement, we're going to flip a coin. Now, Leni's gonna call it in the air, and I'm gonna flip it, and I showed both of them, there are 2 sides to the coin. So let's begin. Leni? Heads. Leni wins the toss, and so she will give her first opening statement, our first opening statement of the night. Yeah, we've explained the rules. I'm super excited to be here. Leni, whenever you're ready.
Hello, I am Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth, and it is an honor to be here today to let you know why I am running to be the next Alderwoman of the 48th Ward. I'm running to represent all the voices here in the ward. I was born on the south side of Chicago. My parents came from the Philippines as nurses, and I was inspired by them. I also became a healthcare worker, physical therapist. I graduated from the Chicago Academy for the Arts High School, and then UIC in physical therapy. I worked at the Cook County healthcare system, including the Cook County Jail. I was an SEIU, Local 73 union worker. When my husband and I decided to plant our roots, we found him in the 48th Ward, and we love the charm of all the neighborhoods in the 48th Ward. We found a rental, and we've been there ever since. When I moved away from physical therapy, I opened up my own small business on Clark Street. It's a dancewear store where we do Argentine tango on Mondays. Please come and dance with me. I would love to see you. I'm a member of the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a board member there. Right now, Our campaign office is on Bryn Mawr, 1129 West Bryn Mawr. We see a lot of empty storefronts across the ward. On Bryn Mawr, which is a historic district, on Asia, on Argyle, which is also a historic district, and on Broadway. We also see a lot of suffering on the streets, on the sidewalks, in our parks, and in our transit systems. People are not getting what they need. There's a crisis with our housing and also our healthcare, including mental health supports. We need treatment, not trauma, and alternatives to policing. We need to listen to the youth, especially the Black and brown youth, who are in the most disinvested parts of our city, and to pass the Peace Book Ordinance, which is the opposite of the gang database, to show people a pathway towards economic stability, especially our youth. We need to fix our systemic issues and tackle the root causes. Stop criminalizing poverty. We need a permanent funding stream for our houselessness. I am the candidate that we're
Sorry, Lenny, that is 3 minutes. Thank you so much. You'll have another chance to answer a question in just a moment.
Thank you, everyone.
Joe Dunne, 3-minute opening statement when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Joe Dunne. I'm a candidate for Alderperson of the 48th Ward. I'm running for Alderperson because this is my home. This is the community I grew up in. I was born and raised right here in the ward. I'm the third generation of my family to live here. I've got very deep roots in the community. My parents lived here before me. My grandmother raised my mother as a single parent while she worked at Edgewater Hospital in housekeeping. And the ward did a lot, the neighborhood and community did a lot for my family and for my mother at that time. I'm raising my family in the house I grew up in. My kids are the fourth generation of my family to live here. I've got deep connections across the ward, and there's people here that I've known my entire life. I've also been very active in the ward. When Jennifer and I bought the house in 2003 and we started raising our kids went to Pierce Elementary School. I still have 2 kids there. I've been very active in the ward at the school. I served 3 terms on the LSC. I served on the fundraising board. I've helped to build that school to become a destination school. I ran the principal selection committee that selected Principal Amy, who's been a really great progressive leader at the school, who's taken the school to new heights. On the fundraising board, we invested money back. We worked with the school community and the business community to raise the money. We invested it back in for arts programming, for enrichment programming and supports for the teachers and the students. I served on the Edgewater Community Council back in the day when that still existed, and I think it's missing in the community. We need to bring something like that back. I've got a really strong commitment here to the ward, and I've also been, professionally, I've been building affordable housing across the city. So when you talk about disinvested communities, I've worked in them, I've seen the problems on the ground, and I've devoted my professional career to trying to address that. I think stable housing is one of the first things we need to turn people's lives around, to give them stable housing, help them stabilize their lives. Then they can focus on education, they can focus on economic development, they can focus on all the things that will address the root causes of poverty and help us to improve the city as a whole. And a lot of that's applicable right here in our ward. I want to be the alderman of the 48th Ward so that I can implement those things I've been doing across the city right here in the community that I grew up in, because that's important to me. It's important to see positive change here, to take care of the people that are least able to take care of themselves, whether it's people with mental health issues or people with addiction or people living in the parks. We need to work together as a community to address those issues. I've got the experience to do it. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. I want to do it right here where I grew up, because this community means a whole lot to me, a whole lot to my family, and I want my children to recognize that, to embrace it, to raise their families here as well.
Moving on to the neighborhood group submitted questions. We're going to start the first one, and Leni, your 2-minute response will be first for this first question. What is your vision for the 48th Ward, and what do you see as your top 3 priorities in your first year in office?
Thank you for the question. The 3 issues that keep coming up at the door include housing affordability, economic development, and healthcare, including mental health supports. All of those things need to be viewed through an equity lens and a holistic approach. We need leadership at the mayoral level, and I'm proud to be endorsed by candidate Brandon Johnson. And we need community voices at the table. So I look forward to working with you in this room, block clubs, and community groups to get things done. We need structural changes, and I'm the candidate that can do that.
Thank you, Leni. Joe, 2 minutes, same question. What's your vision for the 48th Ward, your top 3 priorities for your first year in office?
Thank you. So my vision for the 48th Ward is to see the ward remain the welcoming, diverse community that it is, to see the affordability, that the naturally occurring affordability we've had across the ward that's allowed it to be diverse, to see that continue. I think we need to have a bold plan. We've got some headwinds. We have inflation, we have rising property taxes, rising rents. We need to have a bold plan to try and address these issues. And I think that as we look forward, I see opportunities for affordable housing development along the red line as the CTA finishes their work and pulls out of those sites. We need to be working as a community to plan for that. I've done affordable housing work where we've done 50% affordable in a mixed income community. I think that can work here in Edgewater. I think that can work on those sites along the red line. I think that we need to be looking for sustainability. When the red line, it runs right through our community. When that's completed, there's a brand new space underneath there where the embankment used to exist. I think that's a perfect opportunity for us to build out the infrastructure for electrical car charging stations so that we can move away from fossil fuels and we can promote the use of electric vehicles. That infrastructure doesn't exist. It makes it harder for people to make that transition. I think we need to look at opportunities like the Bazazian Library, where we can rebuild the Bazazian Library to have a brand new library facility with senior housing above, like exists at Pratt and Weston, like exists down on Taylor Street, and housing for the people in our communities. I think we need bold ideas like that. The first 3 things I would do, the top 3 things I would do as alderman. 1, I push forward on affordable housing development here. I would repeal the property tax increase that happens automatically tied to the inflation. Taxes go up, it raises rents, it impacts renters, it impacts businesses, it impacts all of us. And I'm out of time, so I only get to tell you 2.
Fair enough. But you get the next one, so if you want to roll it in, that's fine with me. This is a resident write-in. Prompt and reliable communication of issues and events in the community is important to keeping the ward safe and thriving. How will you inform and engage the constituents from all areas that make up the 48th Ward on issues such as community safety initiatives, transit, schools, and future building development projects? Lenny went first last time, so please, Joe.
Sure. So I'm a big proponent of community engagement, and I really think we need to reinvigorate the block clubs in the community. A weekly email going out is great. That's pushing information. We need to be working directly with people so that that information can be disseminated out in the community and the neighborhoods. And there are areas of our community that used to have block clubs that aren't there anymore, or they aren't strong block clubs anymore. I think we need to get into all parts of the ward and rebuild that community engagement, because community engagement is critical to governing the ward. If as alderman, I'm your representative. I need to hear from you. I need to understand what your issues are and the hot button items that need to be dealt with. And that's a conversation. That's a push and pull of information. I think the block clubs are critical. I mentioned the Edgewater Community Council. You know, the block clubs need a central voice. They need to work together. The council was that. I don't know that we can bring the council back, but we need a central repository for all of the block clubs to work together and to talk together, because I've said it earlier, we've got a very diverse ward. We've got high rises with seniors on Sheridan Road. We've got single family homes in the area we're in right now. We've got large rental buildings. We've got condominium buildings. We've got immigrants and refugees in the neighborhood. We have the large Asian population. We have people from Nigeria and Ethiopia, South and Central America, Russia. We need to build a structure where they're all having a voice and they're all communicating with the alderman's office, but also communicating together. So that's how I would engage with the community. That's how I would push and pull information back and forth. I think it's important that it's done at a community level, not just from the alderman's office.
I have the same question. Prompt, reliable communication of issues. How will you inform and engage constituents from all areas of the ward?
Emails are great. Social media is faster. There are a lot of ways to communicate, including through paper and through text. And I'll use all the platforms to continue conversations that we have, starting with town halls, having listening sessions with block clubs, with community-based organizations such as the Southeast Asian Center, with Care for Rio, with LSCs across the board, because healthy schools need to happen in the ward, and it needs public and private and community investments. I want to continue all the work that has been done in the 48th ward. We are one of the most engaged wards. Our voter turnout is always on the top. So I thank you all for being here. I need your voice. There's nothing that we can't do if we do it together. I want to be the voice in City Council that represents all of us, and it's going to take all of us together working towards that end. It can't be a one-way communication. I need to hear from you, and your voice matters. Even if you don't vote in the ward, I will still represent you. Even if your language isn't English as your first language, I will still represent you. Even if you don't have a job, I will still represent you. I want to represent all the voices in the ward, and we all need to work together so that we are all safe, healthy, whole, and can lead dignified lives, not only in the 48th ward, but across Chicago.
Thank you, Leni. And Joe had the last one, so this first one's for you, or this third question is now for you, Leni. Neighborhood safety is one of the top concerns for residents and local businesses. What do you think are the most pressing safety issues, and what specific strategies would you use to build a safer city and ward?
Again, this is going to take leadership. We need a mayor who's going to prioritize structural change and also putting people in place that can do the job, including a new police superintendent who has a city-wide strategy. You all were able to vote for the new ECPS district councilman people, and we need to work together along with the police department, with the fire department, with the schools and the teachers and the chambers of commerce to find ways that we can all be safe to get what we need. When we think about public safety, we also have to think about who is living in violent conditions every single day, including those who live on the south and west sides of Chicago, where disinvestment has happened for decades. So I look to young people, young Black and brown people who are putting together ordinances, including the Peace Book Ordinance, which is proposed by Good Kids Mad City, which will be the opposite of the gang database, which will allow opportunities for young people to invest in futures with real jobs, including violence disruptors. We need to work with the new ECPS council, we need to work with the new mayor, we need to work with the new police superintendent to make all of us safe. There is a CARES program that's piloted in Uptown and in Rogers Park that we could look to also for alternatives to policing. We need treatment, not trauma, so that we can also have mental health clinics so that people get the health resources that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, same question. Neighborhood safety. What do you think are the most pressing safety issues, and what specific strategies would you use to build a safer city and ward?
So public safety has been the number one issue I've heard as I've gone across the board, whether it's Sheridan Road, whether it's Lakewood Balmoral, whether it's the business districts in Argyle, on Devon, on Clark Street, on Bryn Mawr. There's consistent themes of public safety, and I think there's two approaches we need to be taking at the same time. And one of them is trying to address the root causes of what's going on and what's driving crime and public safety. And I think, in my experience, I keep coming back to affordable housing, right? We need to be building affordable housing in the city because it gives people that stable place to live. We need housing for the people living in the parks. There's a housing first model. Get people housed first, and then get them the services they need to get their lives back together so they can be stable. We need to be doing that. We need the violence interruption. We need all of the mental health services to be funded so that we can work with these people, but we also need to be addressing crime on the streets. The businesses on Bryn Mawr have been broken into, on Clark Street, on Devon. It's been a consistent thing as I've been going around visiting with businesses that have been broken into. We need the police re-engaged in our community, and we need to work with them on community policing. We need active, reinvigorated, engaged community policing in the 48th ward, and we need to work together on that. That's us as residents, that's business leaders, that's the police department. We need to be working in partnership to make sure that we know where the crime is happening, that we can have police officers out and about who know us, who know people in the neighborhood, who know the businesses, and can be engaged to make sure that crime is not happening. Bryn Mawr is a perfect example. We need a community task force there to deal with all the conditions there that are pushing out businesses, that are allowing the conditions for crime to continue to happen, and we need to work together as a community on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, Leni answered last time, so this next one's for you. Chicago Public Schools is no longer the nation's third largest school district after a decade of enrollment decline. The loss of students has had significant impacts on neighborhood high schools. How will you address declining enrollment?
So to some degree, declining enrollment in Chicago Public Schools is due to an outflow of people from the city of Chicago. And I think we need to focus on creating conditions in the city that will keep people in the city. And there's a number of things that come to mind for me on that. One of them is economic development. We need economic development in the city. We need private investment, but we also need public investment. If you look at where the city's invested dollars in public investments, private investment follows. And in some cases, it follows in a bad way, and that's, for me, that's in Humboldt Park and Logan Square where the 606 happened. So I think we need to be forward-looking when the city's making public investments. And again, I come back to the red line. So when the red line's complete, we're gonna have a lot of public investment coming, or private investment coming to the neighborhood. We need to be planning ahead for that. We need equitable funding for our schools. The student-based funding model is terrible. It puts more money in schools that are doing well and takes money from schools that are doing poorly. So we need a school funding system that's going to support schools that really need the support rather than moving resources to schools that don't need it. And I think that we need to look at opportunities for the schools to feed into economic development. I think that again, and I keep coming back to affordable housing because that's my world and it's important and we need it in the city. As we're building affordable housing, we need to be creating opportunities for jobs in the communities where we're building the housing. And I think we can work with CPS on that. We can bring a trade school program back to CPS. We can work with the trade unions, we can work with the schools, and we can work with the people who are building across the city to create opportunities for our youth to have a career in the trades. I mean, these are jobs that pay really well. They come with benefits. They're union jobs. And that's what we need.
Thank you, Joe. Leni, same question. How will you address declining enrollment, specifically in high schools?
Specifically in high schools. So we have a great high school, Sen High School in the 48th Ward. We do need reasons for people to stay. I knock on thousands of doors since the beginning of this campaign, especially new families, new mothers who are considering where to send their schools. And I want them to consider all of the neighborhood schools in the 48th Ward. Schools are a reflection of the health of a community, but people need reasons to stay. People want the amenities, the full amenities of living in an urban area such as the 48th Ward. They want transit that works for them, that they feel safe to take. They want to feel safe walking down the streets. They want to be able to walk down all of our economic corridors and shop. They want to be able to bring their families to a coffee shop on Bryn Mawr after 4 o'clock. They want to be able to bring their visitors to a nice restaurant on Sheridan Road. They want all of the full amenities, but we have to give them that reason, and that is we need community and economic development. As a member of the Andersonville Chamber of Commerce, that's what we do, and we want to do that, and I want to do that as alderwoman across the whole ward. People want reasons to be in their community, and small businesses are one way that you could do that. They are anchors in our community. I love this ward. My kids loved living here. We went to the parks. We need to be able to bring that forward and have them consider this as a place that they can bring their kids eventually and plant their own roots. Thank you.
Thank you, Leni. And you'll also be the first to answer this next resident write-in. Would you support efforts to close significantly under-enrolled CPS schools and/or allow charter schools to begin using CPS facilities? Leni?
The question is if I would allow public schools to be closed and instead charter schools to be used.
Would you support efforts to close significantly under-enrolled CPS schools and/or allow charter schools to begin using CPS facilities?
I don't think that closing public schools is the answer. It hasn't worked before. We should not consider that an option now.
Okay, short and sweet. Joe, same question. Would you support efforts to close significantly under-enrolled CPS schools and/or allow charter schools to begin using CPS facilities?
No, I would not. I think we need to be supporting the public schools, and I think that we have a very under-enrolled public school right here. It's just south in Uptown, Uplift School, Uplift High School. It's a great school. It's got a very low enrollment. I know people who have their children there. I know people who are on the LSC and the Friends of that are struggling to keep that school relevant and to keep that school open. I think that under-enrolled schools like that, we need to be working with CPS and the community to support them and to figure out how do we keep it open? How do we keep that school as a resource? And I think that my idea about bringing a trades program back is an ideal way to focus on these under-enrolled schools. Let's bring in new programming that will bring in new students that will support the neighborhood that the school's in, that will be able, the students will be able to learn a profession and move seamlessly into apprenticeships with the unions and on to a great career in a union trade position. And I think, when you look across Chicago, there's always construction going on, there's building happening all the time. These are jobs, the unions are looking for people. We need to start building a pipeline where communities that have historically been left out of the union trades can start to have an opportunity to get in there on the ground floor, build careers, and successful lives in Chicago, raise their kids here, and send their kids to public schools here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Joe, you'll be the first to answer this next question. What is the top infrastructure improvement needed in the ward that is not currently being addressed? And what funding sources would you seek or allocate to support them?
So I think I've touched on what I think is the top infrastructure need in the ward that's not being addressed, and that's really building out an infrastructure for moving forward in decarbonizing the new construction and vehicle transportation in the city of Chicago. I think that we need an infrastructure there that makes it easier for people to own electric cars, because gas cars they're going to go away. They're going to get phased out. They need to get phased out. They're causing climate change, or they're contributing to climate change, and we're seeing the impacts of that all over the place, particularly right now in California. The rains and the flooding out there are nuts, right? So how do we get there? We need to invest now in the infrastructure that allows people to own those cars. I'm going to need a new car pretty soon, and Jennifer and I have talked about, let's get an electric car. I don't want to run a extension cord out across the lawn and plug it in. There's people that have to do that. They shouldn't have to do that. We need that infrastructure investment in the ward. We need it in the city. And again, I think right there under the red line, we got brand new space that's going to be there. That embankment is going away. If you've seen the structure, it's open. It's open underneath. They're taking away the embankment. And there's all kinds of electrical power available that powers those trains. That's public power, that's public land. We can do it. I want to see it happen. That'll be one of my priorities as always.
Thank you, Joe. Same question. What's the top infrastructure improvement needed in the ward that is not being addressed? And what funding sources would you seek or allocate to support them?
We have a very pedestrian-friendly ward. I walk the ward every day and talk to thousands of voters just walking the ward. But we also have roads that separate us. Lakeshore Drive, Bridge, Broadway. These are like rivers that cut through us. And people are not safe. We should all be able to use our roads and our sidewalks, whether we walk or bike or use an assisted device. We need to make investments because one death is too many. We need to work with the states and federal governments to make sure that we have the money that we need to make investments to our roadways, to make sure that bikes and cars and pedestrians can use the roads.
Thank you. Next one's for you, Leni. With the advent of the Complete Streets initiative, there's growing pressure to include bike and pedestrian infrastructure in road improvement projects. How would you address the conflicts and challenges faced by cyclists, residential and business parking, and delivery and emergency vehicle access on major arterial streets? to you.
Similar, what I was just saying, we need to work together. We have a lot of delivery trucks and they block the bike lanes. And so bikers have had to move around those trucks, and that's when we lose lives. We have infrastructure changes that happened on North Clark Street without input from businesses and from the community, and caused a lot of confusion. We need community voice whenever big decisions are being made, especially when it comes to infrastructure. We need stoplights. We need a way for pedestrians to cross the road. I talked to one business owner. She said, "Leni, this is how I cross Clark Street." This is not right. We need a major overhaul of our citywide bike grid. So I support that. Again, one death is too many. We should all be able to use the roads, whether we bike or drive or walk or use an assisted device. And we have many people who have disabilities who need to use our walkways and our roads in a safe way. If we are not centering them, then we are losing people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Leni. And Joe, again, with the advent of the Complete Streets Initiative, there's growing pressure to include bike and pedestrian infrastructure in road improvement projects. How would you address the conflicts and challenges faced by cyclists, residential and business parking, and delivery and emergency access on major arterial streets?
So I think what the issue is we're trying to adapt the older infrastructure we have. We've got streets that are built for cars, right? And we're trying to adapt them now to bicycles and pedestrians and scooters and keep it safe for everybody. When you look, Leni mentioned Clark Street bike lanes, right? If you're going south on Clark Street, you take that bike lane, takes you over to Ashland and stops. And you're right out into Ashland, right? DPD, the Department of Planning and Development right now, is working on a plan to put in protected bike lanes from Montrose to Foster on Clark Street. So if you come north on those bike lanes from Montrose to Foster, it stops. Where do you go, right? So there's not comprehensive planning going on how we're implementing these changes to the street. We need to have a grid. We need to have a bike grid that's interconnected that will provide safe roadways where bikers go where they can go and be safe, whether it's protected bike lanes, whether it's shared lanes. The solution is not going to be the same in each area, but when this is implemented, we need to be working with the businesses to make sure that they have input into what's going on the streets, because the businesses, the local small businesses are an incredibly important part of our community. A lot of them are owned by people who live here. We need to be supporting those businesses, and they need to have a voice in the planning as well. So, when it comes to confusion over the markings, I think the solution is that it's got to be consistent. We have to have a consistent implementation of how we're installing the bike lanes, how we're marking where it's delivery zone, how we're marking where it's parking, and we need to be accounting for specific zones for delivery so that trucks aren't blocking up the bike lanes, that trucks aren't blocking up the traffic lanes. And once we start planning it consistently like that, and you have those zones where someone can pull over, you'll have a space for the emergency vehicles as well.
Thank you, Joe. Next one, another resident writing that plays in basically to what you were just talking about, which is how would you address the use of motorized electric vehicles in bike lanes? Do you support the expansion of the public safety pilot program to allow automated ticketing of vehicles parked in bus and bike lanes? So 2 questions there.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure thing. How would you address the use of motorized electric vehicles in bike lanes? And do you support the expansion of the public safety pilot program, automated ticketing of vehicles in those lanes, bus and bike?
So is motorized electric vehicles, is that scooters, or it sounds like 2 different questions.
Motorized electric vehicles, I'm going to say is scooters. So how would you address the use of them? It's not something that's very common right now. It's going to be a new thing that's implemented in the board.
Well, I think that as, it comes back to the previous question, as you mentioned. If we have a consistent plan, if we have consistent markings, if we're planning for the use of scooters, and obviously they're out there, so we should be planning for the use of them. I think scooters, maybe the bike lanes need to be wider to accommodate scooters and bikes as well. I think it's consistent planning. And then the more important for me is the second part of the question, which is how do you deal with people parking in them, and do I support the automated ticketing? I think the automated ticketing, 100% I support that. We need to start enforcing not parking in those lanes, and I think you change behavior. My daughter goes to Lane Tech. I drive her there. I used to before I started doing this, and this is all I do. I used to drive her to school, and behavior has changed where you have the traffic cameras. So people know it's 20 miles an hour when you're near a school. It's so much safer. People slow down. I go 20 miles there when it's not even a school day because I don't know, is it going to write a ticket anyway? But I think that the use of those cameras in the bike lanes is important. It'll start changing behavior. I also think we need to use them in places like Sheridan and Ardmore. And the intersection there, which is a major access point for pedestrians and bicycles to access the lakefront trail, that intersection is always gridlocked, and that pushes people to leak down Sheridan Road on their bicycles. It makes it hard and unsafe to cross the intersection. Start putting in those cameras right there, people will stop blocking the box. I think it could be implemented as well on parts of Bryn Mawr as you're going to Lakeshore Drive, because that also, people block the box and traffic can't flow, and that's when you start creating unsafe conditions for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for scooters. So I 100% support the automated cameras for that purpose.
The same pair of questions, addressing motorized electric vehicles and lanes, whether or not you support the automated ticketing of vehicles parked in bus and bike lanes.
I think for me, I think about my teenagers who are learning how to drive, and their training is much different from when I learned to drive. I won't tell you how many years ago. But it's very different on the road right now. There are so many more people using the roads, including bicyclists, including scooters, including those scooters that don't have any handles. I mean, it is really hard to turn your head over your shoulder if you're on a scooter. It is very dangerous out there. And so I worry about my kids driving safely on the road with all of these vehicles. So yes, we need to address the safety of everybody on the roads. And at the same time, we need to figure out how to keep people accountable and use the roads in a responsible way. I'm for the automated ticketing, but also we need to do it in a way that is equitable, because the drivers of the delivery trucks, they're just doing their jobs. But if they don't have the infrastructure that will support them in a way that also helps the community be safe, then we are also punishing people who are just doing their jobs.
Thank you, Leni. And this next one's for you as well. How would you approach providing housing and support services to the unhoused? That's it. It's a short one. Housing and support services for the unhoused.
We must have a housing first approach, and then provide the wraparound services that people need. How will we provide housing? We have to do it. We have to demand those funds from the federal government. We need a collective effort to say this is wrong. This is a national crisis. Chicago is a world-class city. It is not enough for us to bring propane every week to people living in the tents. We can do better. We need structural changes, including a permanent funding source that is progressive. And there are coalitions of groups that are working on this. We need to support that. And we need city council to actually come to the table to talk about these issues. I would come to the table, even just to talk about these issues. We need the will to do it. We know it needs to be done. We need people, good policy, and a culture of care. And so let's do it. Let's bring Chicago home. Woo! let's do it with a great mayor who can lead the way. Thanks.
Joe, how would you approach providing housing and support services to the unhoused?
I think there's a couple of approaches that we need to take, and when I started, I'd like to say, I actually have experience doing this. The last project that I financed when I worked for Holston Real Estate was the Lawson House YMCA. It was a 583-room SRO hotel operated by the YMCA. Bathrooms down the hall, very small rooms. It was very deteriorated. It took me like about 12 years to get the financing in place. Well, actually, that's not true. It'll be 12 years when it's completed. It took about 10 years to get the financing in place. It's under construction right now. And the approach we took there was people need dignified housing. So the building's going to be individual studio apartments for people who are either homeless, actively homeless, or at risk of homelessness, or recently coming off the streets. And it's, you have your own kitchen, you have your own bath, you have your own space to live. So I think that providing dignified housing is important. But it takes a really long time to get that done. 11, 12 years, we can't wait for that for the people who are in the parks right now. We need to be utilizing rental subsidy programs. We have the Chicago Low Income Housing Trust Fund. It's a local rental subsidy program that can take someone off the streets, give them a subsidy, get them into housing that's available right now in the market, and then we can bring those wraparound services to help keep them housed. We need to advocate for more federal Section 8 dollars, so that we can do the same thing. There hasn't been a new stream of Section 8 subsidy in way too long. It's an important tool for affordable housing. It's an important tool for homeless housing. And then when we talk about the Bring Chicago Home Ordinance, this is an increase to the transfer tax, and it hasn't passed because, in my opinion, people aren't coming to the table because they haven't been invited to the table. When I've gone around campaigning, I've met with agencies and organizations that would be allies that haven't.
I have good news, Joe. You're out of time. The bad news is you're out of time. The good news is the next question is, would you support increasing funding to address homelessness by raising the real estate transfer tax? On properties valued at more than $1 million. You can't see my sheet, can you?
I'm not answering that.
Okay.
So I'll finish what I was saying. I've had a lot of conversations about Bring Chicago Home. I think it's an important ordinance, and I think it's critical that we are supporting the programs to get people housed. The issue that I've seen, and I support Bring Chicago Home, we need to do it. We need to have a mechanism to provide funding for building housing for homelessness, for funding the wraparound services. But there's, like I was saying, there are organizations that are allies that would participate in supporting this ordinance, but they weren't invited to the table. And then I've got some questions about how it's structured. Is $1 million threshold the right place? Because it's an inflection point right now. As it's written, if you sell your home for $900,000, you don't pay this increased tax. If you sell it for $1,001,001, you pay that increased tax. So that has a distorting impact on the market. So, I think we need to get people to the table and let's talk about it. Should it be a graduated tax across a stream of sales levels? How do you implement it? Who needs to be at that table? The really big impacts are going to be on some of the buildings downtown that office buildings aren't doing well right now, right? So, we have to have BOMA, the Building Owners Management Association, they need to be at the table. SEIU Local 1, who is the union for all the maintenance and janitorial guys who work in those buildings, they need to be at the table. We need to build a bigger coalition. We need to ask questions about how to structure it to get it passed. And I'm willing to do that. I think that's going to be hard work. We got to build a coalition. We got to have difficult conversations with people who are our allies, people who should be our allies. I've done that in my professional career. I've done that in my volunteership here in the ward. You got to bring people together. Let's have that conversation. Let's find the right way to fund homelessness, housing. We don't want to fund homelessness. Let's find it. Let's make it happen.
So, then that question again. Would you support increasing funding to address homelessness by raising the real estate transfer tax on properties valued at more than $1 million?
I support Great Chicago Home as it is written right now, as it is led by the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. But there are other opportunities on the table, including progressively increasing the tax from $250,000 and up. But most importantly, whatever is on the table, city council members actually have to come to the table. Last time it was proposed, we could have talked about it, but half of city council did not show up. This stops efforts from grassroots people who've been working very hard to find solutions to combat poverty and houselessness. We need representatives that want to work across the whole city, and that takes a relationship builder. I have been doing that as a mother, as a small business owner, as a member of the Chamber of Commerce, as a founder of several activist groups that are statewide and local, and that's the kind of representative I will be in City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Leni, what opportunities do you see for residential and retail development along the Broadway corridor following the completion of RPM in 2025? And what are your plans to revitalize the businesses along the Red Line in all sections of the ward?
So the revitalization of Broadway is going to be dependent on the completion of the Red Purple line, and that hasn't been addressed in 100 years. So once we have that in place, it's going to be fantastic. But in the meantime, we have an opportunity to think about what we want to see on those corridors. 40th Ward is one of the most densely populated wards, and there isn't as much opportunity to develop. There's a mandate to develop close to mass transit. Mass transit gets us to where we want to go, and that includes seniors to their medical appointments, includes kids to their schools, and workers to their jobs. So we need all sorts of housing, and 48th Ward is not only diverse in ethnicity and in class, but also in housing stock. So thinking about creative solutions to fulfilling the promise of Connected Communities Ordinance, which calls for economic development around mass transit, and looking to developers, a diversity of developers who have ideas, including mixed-use buildings along these corridors. I am for that. I look to the community to see what you want to see, because small businesses can't survive without community support. It's not enough to have small businesses open their shop. They need communities to actually come into their doors so that we don't lose places like the Swedish Bakery, so that we don't lose businesses like Gas Hardware or the shoe repair guy who's on Balmoral who always yelled at me because of her shoes. Those are not leather shoes, Lenny. Small businesses are the character of a community, and we need more of them. Thank you.
Same question. What opportunities do you see for residential and retail development along the Broadway corridor following completion of RPM in 25? And what are your plans to revitalize the businesses along the Red Line in all sections of the ward?
So I think I touched on it earlier when I talked about the Red Line. It's going to bring investment into the community, right? And we need to be planning now, because there are large sites right now that are owned by the CTA. And when they're done with the work, they're going to get rid of those sites. They're going to put them out for a request for proposals for what can you build here? What will you pay us for the land? We need to be working together as a community right now to say, what do we want to see there? And what I think should go there is mixed income housing, mixed use development with retail on the ground floor, housing above. But it's not my decision, it's got to be ours. And as a community, we've got the opportunity, since those sites are owned by the CTA, we got an opportunity to influence that request for proposals, to say, when you put that out for bid, here's what it needs to ask for. And it could be 50% affordable housing on those sites, with market rate housing as well. It could be for sale housing, it doesn't have to be rental. For sale affordable housing is much harder to do, but it can be done. There's other sites, there's the retail sites that are probably gonna come up for development. The Jewel on Broadway is a potential redevelopment site. We need to be doing a community planning process right now. What I'd like to see is a quality of life plan, where we work together to develop a quality of life plan to say, this is what we wanna see in the 48th Ward. Housing, businesses, arts and entertainment. And we put together a plan that can then inform the development of those sites, whether it's a CTA site or a privately owned site. Because when somebody needs a zoning change, they're gonna have to come to us as a community, and we're gonna get to weigh in. So I see a lot of opportunity along Broadway with the Red Line, and then supporting the business corridors. The city has grants, ETNA grants, Equitable Transit-Oriented Development. They target them for businesses in those locations. We need to get our business accessing that money. And I've done it. I sat on the Connected Communities Ordinance Working Group. I know a whole lot about ETNA, but we can talk about that later.
Oh,
I do want
so
to
we
shout
can
out
afford a 1-minute rebuttal for you.
I just want to shout out one thing, which is not only is community needed at the table, but also our neighborhood chambers of commerce. And at this time, I'll shout out to the Edgewater, Andersonville, and Uptown chambers of commerce that also are in the 48th Ward. Thank you.
One rebuttal, sorry, per question. That's how it goes. But you get the next one, so you can work it in. Again, opening a business is not a quick or easy process. A common issue heard among businesses is the length of time to process licenses, permits, and inspections. What steps would you take to help businesses get up and running, removing barriers to facilitate small business entrepreneurship? Joe.
So I think it starts with working with the chambers of commerce and making sure that people who are looking to open businesses have the opportunity to access the knowledge base that's here in the ward, from the small business owners we have and the chambers of commerce, because there's people who've done it, right? And we need to tap into that knowledge base. And I think as an alderman, I will have a small business liaison on my staff to make sure that they're working with the chambers of commerce, that they're working with people who are looking to come into the neighborhood and open businesses to make those connections and to find capacity building grants if they exist. They should exist. There's a small business administration, right? So we need to have somebody here who can work with the businesses, help them access the money they need and the knowledge they need to know what's going on and how to open their businesses. And then I keep coming back to, in my mind, a city department or a city bureau that existed 20-some years ago, and it was called Business Express. In the Department of Planning, they had a dedicated group that was their job, to work with small businesses, help them through the permitting, help them make sure they're getting their licenses. We need the city to bring that back. It hasn't been there for ages. So as alderman, I would advocate that the Department of Planning and Development reopen Business Express and make sure that they're assisting the small business owners and the prospective small business owners in communities across the city of Chicago. Because I've applied for a sign permit. I've built high rises, and it took almost as long to get a sign permit as it did to get a permit to build a high rise. It's nonsense. There's got to be a way to cut that red tape, and I think we can do it with capacity building grants on the ground here in the ward, and making sure we have something like Business Express in place and a business liaison in the alderman's office.
Leni, same question. Opening a business is not quick or easy. Common issue heard among businesses, length of time to process licenses, permits, and inspections. What steps would you take to help businesses get up and running, removing barriers to facilitate small business entrepreneurship?
I have a small business. It's been open for 20 years. It's on the corner of Clark and Berman and in Andersonville. And when I opened up, I don't know if you remember this, but that building used to be called the Landmark of Andersonville. It used to be a co-op with 18 businesses, retail and services. And I remember I'm really inspired because my Joel Hall Dance Center was in the neighborhood. It was where I used to go to dance, and I wanted to go back to dance. And there was no shop on the north side of Chicago. I had to go downtown. So I found a business co-op, had a small space in the basement. The ceiling was about this tall. I don't think it was legal, but I rented it. My rent was $400 for that month. And she said, oh, you did well, so I'll extend your lease to 6 months. And then it went on to a year. And that was how I was able to build my inventory. I was very fortunate to have a building manager, her name was Jan Baxter, who said, Leni, you have to join the Chamber of Commerce. You just have to. And I did. She said, they're gonna help you, and they did. They helped me with permits, they helped me advise me on my lease, they helped me secure a lease that helped me to stay there for 20 years. Neighborhood Chambers of Commerce are the liaison from the city to the neighborhoods, and we're very fortunate to have 3, Andersonville, Edgewater, and Uptown. Thank you.
Okay, we get the next one. You can hang up there if you'd like. And that is, how will you work with constituents, community groups, and developers on historic preservation goals for the board?
The question is, how do we work with organization on historic preservation goals? We have several historic districts in the ward, including Bryn Mawr, which my campaign office is on right now, and also Asia on Argyle. We have to work with the Edgewater Historical Society, who've been working in this lane for a very long time, and they are the experts. We want to preserve the character of our neighborhoods, and that includes actual buildings. We look at different parts of Chicago where their histories have just been demolished because of disinvestment. We can't let that happen. Our ward is too beautiful, and we need to preserve it as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Leni. Joe, same question. How will you work with constituents, community groups, and developers on historic preservation goals for the board?
So I actually have experience with historic preservation. I've done a number of renovations, rehabilitations of historic buildings to convert them or preserve them as affordable housing across the city. I've worked with the State Historic Preservation Office. I've worked with the National Park Service. We rebuilt the historic Strand Hotel in Woodlawn. It was an old SRO hotel owned by the city, empty and dilapidated for years. We were able to get access historic tax credits. There's money out there for historic preservation. We were able to access that, convert that building to just about 70 units of studio housing for people in the Woodlawn community, mostly single men who were badly in need of housing. Some were homeless. I've worked on the Midwest Athletic Club in West Garfield Park, the Bryn Mawr and Bell Shore, right on Bryn Mawr, just down the street from Leni's office. Those are two historic buildings that were preserved for affordable housing here in the 48th Ward, and they did access historic tax credits, low-income housing tax credits. It winds up being a whole lasagna of funding, but it doesn't have to be low-income housing to preserve historic structures. I walked through the Epworth Church a couple weeks ago with Killian Walsh and Brian Hogg, who I think I might have seen. There he is in back. I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but there's people in the neighborhood who are looking to preserve these buildings, and what we need to do is work with them. If we can get them landmarked, if the Chicago landmark is an important status, it'll help to preserve them. When buildings have a historic designation, you can access those funding streams, whether it's historic tax credits or not, to preserve them. So I think that what we need to do is identify the buildings we want to preserve. That's working with the Edgewater Historical Society and other community partners. Identify the buildings, let's get them landmarked, let's find the resources to preserve them and work with like-minded developers who want to use them for a good purpose.
alderman's job is to assist residents and businesses with city services, such as loading zone requests and streetscape improvements. That means managing a staff and ensuring that the needs of constituents are met. What experience do you have managing a staff, and how will you communicate and build trust with all neighbors, including our non-native English-speaking neighbors and businesses?
So what experience do I have managing the staff? Right now, if I wasn't on leave from work and running to be alderman, I'm Vice President of Real Estate Development at Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation. And it's a really cool organization. It's a not-for-profit community housing development organization located in Humboldt Park. But that means community housing development organization means that low-income residents sit on the board of directors. So it's a really unique structure where the work I'm doing there, building housing for for residents. Those residents are members of Bickerdike. They elect the board. They're on the board. I work for them when I'm building that housing. And when I'm there doing that work, I'm managing my staff. I've got staff that works for me, that puts together the financing of housing redevelopments. I'm also managing part of the organization. You know, I'm sitting in on annual budget planning, strategic planning. I've done that at Bickerdike. I did that at Holston. I did that when I managed the staff at the Illinois Medical District Commission. I have a lot of experience doing that. For award service staff, when I'm alderman, Dan Luna will stay and be my chief of staff. Dan is a wizard at constituent services. He knows how to get everything done. He knows who to reach out to. It's all relationships are important. I got a great relationship with Dan. Dan has a great relationship with all the agencies in the city that need to provide services here in our ward. And so my job will be to get Dan to train somebody to replace him because he's not going to be here forever. So I think I answered all points of the question, and thank you.
I'll read the whole thing again, Lenny. Part of an alderman's job is to assist residents and businesses with city services, such as loading zone requests and streetscape improvements. That means managing a staff, ensuring the needs of constituents are met. What experience do you have managing a staff, and how will you communicate and build trust with all neighbors, including our non-native English-speaking neighbors and businesses?
Thank you. As a small business owner, I'm an executive, and so I am in charge of hiring and firing staff, and same too as a candidate. And one thing that I pride myself on is having a healthy community in the workplace. I would do the same thing as the alderwoman of the 48th Ward. Staffing is important, that's infrastructure. And I would look to those who have been doing the job, including Maria Haddon in the 49th Ward, who has endorsed me. Because I don't know what I don't know until I know it. And it takes a person who's already in office to let me know what works, what doesn't work. I'm also really grateful that we're also flanked by Andre Vasquez to the west, and also Matt Mark to the south of us, who have run fantastic work. And I would also look for them to see what has worked. 80% of the job of an alderwoman is constituent services. That has to be the priority. The only way to do that is to be in touch with constituents, and I will continue to do that every day as alderwoman of the 48th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Okay, Joe, a 1-minute rebuttal for you.
Hearing the question the second time, I realized I missed the last part of the question, and that's how do you work with non-native speakers and diversity in the ward. The staff I manage at Bickerdike is very diverse. Bickerdike is very diverse. It's a 50-year-old organization that was started basically to work with the Puerto Rican community in Humboldt Park. So it's, you know, I work with Latinos. I work with my staff. My staff speaks Spanish there. It's a very diverse organization. I have familiarity with working within organizations like that. And I also know that what we need in the ward is diversity in the ward office staff. So I can commit to you that my office staff will be representative of the diversity across the ward, whether they're non-native speakers or not. It's important that everybody's included and everybody's got a voice, and my staff will represent that. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Leni, this second to last question is for you. Currently, aldermen are given prerogative over zoning in their ward, and each alderman has a different way of reviewing each alderman has a different way of reviewing and approving zoning requests. What would be your process for reviewing and approving zoning changes if you were elected? And be specific are the last words on that one.
So I live on Clark and Summerdale, which is right across the street from my bank, US Bank, where they want to have a Trader Joe's there. And that process has been community driven. That's just one example. In the other ward, the 40th ward, across the street from me on Clark Street, community has to be involved, and we need to find ways to have conversations continually. I plan on having a community commission, including talking about ways to bring in community, but here's the thing, not everybody can come to these zoning meetings. People have to work. That's why we need good policies in place to make sure that decisions that are made are to preserve the character of our neighborhoods. I'm very excited to represent the 48th Ward. As a small business owner and a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I've been working on whole communities for a very long time, and I'm excited to do that as an alderwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Leni. Joe, currently, alders are given prerogative over zoning in their ward, and each alder has a different way of reviewing and approving zoning requests. What would be your process for reviewing and approving zoning changes if you were alder? Be specific.
Sure. So I think that it needs to be a community-driven process, and I think for me the starting point is coming back to the quality of life plan and having a vision for what we want to see in the ward, what we want to see in the ward, all of us, and that'll drive an initial review. If someone's coming into the ward and they want to redevelop a site, we've got a document to put in front of them and say, here's what we want to see, right? Don't tell us what you want to put there. Start understanding what we want to see in the community. So the community voice has got to be there, and it's got to be proactive. We've got to do it moving forward. As alderman, I'm going to have a community zoning advisory committee that will have open meetings. It's got to be transparent. The developer coming in who wants a zoning change or has a development plan has got to present it to the community. And I would really love to see, and I'm going to keep coming back to some themes here, I'd love to see something to replace the Edgewater Community Council, because that was my first engagement with the ETC was the zoning advisory committee, because somebody was going to build a building, and I was like, well, darn it, how is that going to impact my family and our lives here? So I went to that meeting, and I kind of got pulled in, and I was on board for a little bit. But we need to have that, and I think that it's important that it's a central voice, because what happens over at Summerdale and Broadway impacts people up at Devon and Broadway. What happens in every corner of the ward, it impacts all of us. So I don't want to see a process where one block club is the deciding factor, right? And particularly when we have parts of the neighborhood that don't have strong block clubs. So we got to build up those block clubs. We got to build that central committee where everyone can come together, and we got to have a transparent process. So it's community voice. It's starting off with a quality of life plan and a vision for what we want, and then having that zoning committee and having those meetings, having them in the evenings, so people who go to work are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm not hijacking the proceedings per se, but I have been allowed one question myself. And I'll give you a little time to think about it. And that is, I don't want to leave on a controversial note, but what is your favorite restaurant in the 48th ward? That's a tough one, and I'm going to give you a little time to chew on that. That's a food joke. And in the meantime, while you do, please know, everyone, it's almost 50 degrees here in Chicago. You could be at home grilling in your shorts, but you're here tonight, and I think you deserve a round of applause for that. I also want to shout out all the chambers and neighborhood groups that helped put this together and make the questions so I knew what to say. It's really helpful. This whole thing will be available on YouTube, so be sure to search YouTube for this if you'd like to watch it again and hear yourself clap. And oh yeah, don't forget to vote. Okay, so Joe, you were the last to speak, so this last question goes to you. Your favorite restaurant in the 48th ward, Joe.
No pressure.
Man, this is like a threshold. This is the hardest question of the night, right?
I know,
We
and
we have great restaurants throughout the world.
yes.
So there's a bunch of them that come to mind. Honky down by Argyle, Pizzeria Roma, I love it. But, you know, there's a spot in my heart for patio beef. I was getting hot dogs there when I worked at Dominic's bagging groceries, and he'd give them to us on credit until we got our paycheck and we could go in there and pay it off. So, shout out to Leo, patio beef, my favorite place in the world.
Thank you, Joe. Now, just to be clear, we still have 3-minute closing statements from each of our candidates. But in the meantime, Leni, your favorite restaurant in the 48th ward?
From now until Saturday, when our fundraiser happens from 4 to 6 o'clock, Caleb is my favorite restaurant in the 48th.
Both great answers. And now, since Leni, you were the last to answer the last question, you'll be the first to give your 3-minute closing statement.
I'm running for the 48th ward because I love this ward. I want it to be a place where my kids would consider settling down and for generations to come. We have an opportunity now to set the stage for their futures. I've been a coalition builder for many years, but for far too long, we have been using Band-Aids on issues that really need systemic, permanent change. I know we can do many things together because we have already done it before. Equity has to be at the center of everything. And when we think about community, it means all of us. I will be the voice for all the people in the 48th ward, and I would be honored to be your next alderwoman in the 48th ward. Thank you.
First off, I want to thank the Chambers of Commerce and the Block Clubs for putting this together tonight. This is really great thing. I'm honored to be here. Pat, thank you for moderating or emceeing or however you want to be known. Leni, thank you for being here as well. The biggest thanks is to my family for their enduring patience with this whole process. Jennifer, Brady, Molly, Joe, I really appreciate your support. I wouldn't be here without it. I'm Joe Dunne. I'm looking forward to being the next alderman of the 48th ward. I hope to have your votes. And I want to say, Leni and I agree on a lot of things, right? We have the same progressive ideals. I really believe that. The difference is, I've got the experience and the skills and the plan, I think, to realize those ideals. leader for the ward day one, to step in and start taking action to improve the lives of everyone in our ward, from all corners of the ward. I've worked in communities across the city. I've worked with elected officials. I've worked with aldermen. I've worked with I've worked with the state. I've worked with every single agency in the city that touches community redevelopment, housing, planning, streets and sand, water, Bureau of Electric. I've worked with ComEd. Goodness knows, I have that experience. I've done it. I want to do it now for us, for our ward, for my community where I grew up. That's important to me because I love this neighborhood. I love the people that live here. I got a real passion for the 48th Ward. It sounds goofy, but it's true. This is where my family's from. This is where I want my kids to live. We've got an opportunity. I've talked about the red line. We've got an opportunity to be a leader in the city for sustainability. Let's get those electric car charging stations under there. We've got an opportunity to build real amounts of affordable housing across the city. There's 100,000 plus units of affordable housing needed. I want to see 35,000 units built at a minimum in the next 10 years. We can build some of them right here in our ward. We can do them on Broadway. We can do them when the CTA pulls out. We can support the affordable housing we have, the natural occurring affordable housing and the buildings that are providing that now. I've got a lot of great endorsements that I'm proud of. I'm endorsed by Greg Harris, who passed the Illinois Marriage Equality Act. I mean, Greg's done great things. I'm honored to be endorsed by him. I'm endorsed by SEIU. I'm endorsed by AFSCME. And the list goes on. Harry Osterman, all of our elected officials and former elected officials here in the ward have endorsed me as a leader because they know what skills I have. And I'm particularly proud to be endorsed by personal staff. They've been leading the reproductive rights for so many years. I look forward to April 4th. I hope to earn your vote by then. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for your enthusiasm. Thank you to St. Rita's. Thank you to the Chambers. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, 48th Ward.